Hello there and then welcome to a brand new video. This is Hub Beyond Numbers where we learn maths the easy way. Now in this video we are looking at proportion, or in other words, proportionality. When we say proportion, what does it mean? Right? So proportion, it simply shows the relationship between two quantities that change together in a specific way. So that is what you see. It shows the relationship between two quantities, right? They change together in a specific way. That is, if one quantity is increasing, the other is either increasing or decreasing, right, in a particular specific way. There are two of these types of proportions we'll be looking at. There are two of them. So for these two, the first one is called the direct proportion, and then the second one being inverse proportion. So we have the direct, as you can see here, and then the inverse or indirect. And for this video, we are looking just at the direct proportion. All right. So let's look at what the direct proportion is. So when we talk of direct proportion, two quantities are said to what? The two quantities are directly proportional if they increase or decrease at the same time. If they do what? They increase or what? Do decrease at the same time. Now, what do we mean by the increase or decrease at the same time? When you have this scenario, you have men, right? Men, a number of, let's say, footballers on a particular field. Would you realize that as the number of footballers increase, the number of bottles of water that will be drunk would definitely increase? You see, that is a direct proportion. So as the number of footballers increase, number of people to drink, the football number of bottles of water that will be drunk would also increase proportionally, you see. So that is a direct proportion. The same way, if the number of footballers decrease, then the number of bottles of water that will be needed as well would decrease, you see. So that is direct proportionality. Now, if we want to work these, we have a formula we use, right? So let's say you have two quantities. You have quantity y and then quantity x. If you want to say they are directly proportional, then we write it as y is directly proportional to what? X. You see, this here is what we use to indicate proportionality. As you can see, when we started, I wrote that over here, right? So we say y is directly proportional to x. Now, after writing it this way, you would want to write it with an equal to sign. You see, so to write it with an equal to sign, we say y is equal to, then you put k, then x. What we mean here is, before you remove this symbol, then you need to introduce a constant. And we call this constant, the k over here, the constant of proportionality. The constant of what? Proportionality. So this here is what we call what? Direct proportion. With the understanding established, let's look at how we can apply it in solving questions. So this here is the first question we'll be using to test our understanding. Example 1 is, if 3 pens cost 6 cedis, how much would 5 pens cost? Now, I would urge you to really pay close attention to how we'll be working this out, because we'll be doing it using two methods, and they are all appropriate, and if you understand them, they would really do help you. Now, looking at our problem, they said what? 3 pens cost 6. How much will 5 pen cost? Definitely, since 3 pen cost 6, then it would simply mean the 5 pens would also what? Increase. So as the number of pens increase, that is from 3 to 5, then the price or their cost would also what? Increase. Hence, we see a direct proportionality between the number of pens and then the cost. You see? So let's just say the number of pens, you see, is directly proportional to what? The cost. This is what I've written here. Now, we are using the same idea here, right? So if the number of pens is directly proportional to the cost, then we can say writing it with an equal to symbol. So it becomes our P is equal to KC, where we said our K is the constant of proportionality. With that said, we come back to our question and then pick out our parameters. So we remember that using our first parameter, there was 3 pens, right? So that is our P is equal to 3, and the cost was what? 6 cedi. So C is equal to what? 6. Hence, we now do what? Do our substitution. So you would want to substitute these values you have. Why do we want to do that? We want to look for the value of K. DC. So substituting, we said our P is equal to 3. So 3 is equal to the K. We don't know it. So K times the C, which is what? 6. Then at this stage, we make what the subject? We make K the subject. So making K the subject, we just divide both sides by what? 6. And we would say this 6 here cancels out this 6. And it will imply that our K is equal to what? 3 over 6, which is 1 over 2. This here allows us to what? Rewrite this we have over here. You see? So it simply means that for every P, it is equal to our K. Our K is 1 over 2C. This would become a general formula we can use to get the price of what? Any number of pen. You see, remember we said this P here was the number of pen, and then this C here was what? The cost of the pen. So you can interchange them. If it is number of pens you have, fine. If it is the cost you have, you can interchange to look for the other variable. So now that we have this over here, we now come back to the question. It says, how much will 5 pens cost? 5 pen cost. You see, so we have used this parameter and this parameter, and that has allowed us to get our K. So we can now solve for what? The C. It says, how much will 5 pen cost? So this simply implies that if 5 pens, we put our 5 is equal to 1 over 2. Do we know the cost? We don't know the cost. So C. You see, so it is the cost that we want, making our C the subject. All we would have to do is to multiply both sides by what? 2. So multiplying both sides by 2, this here cancels this. You see, you are going to get 5 times 2, which is what? 10 is equal to C. You see, so it simply means that the cost of 5 pens is going to be what? 10 cedis. All right. So the cost of 5 pens is what? 10 cedis. Now, the other way we can solve this, right? We can solve this another way. How do we go about it? So I'll be doing that here. You can just look at it. So we say if 3 pens cost what? 6 cedis, right? So 3 pens. So we just say that 3 is to 6. Do you see? 3 is to 6. Now, how much will 5 pens cost? So 5 is to what? Right? So if the cost of 3 pens is 6, then the cost of 5 pens, do you think it will be more or it is going to be less? You see, will it be more or is going to be less? It is a direct proportion, which simply means if 3 pen costs 6, then 5 pen is also going to cost more. There's going to be an increase. So we say if more, less divide. What do we mean by less divide? This here is going to give us an answer that is more than this. So we compare these two values, right? This here and then this. Which one is less? Which one is less? This here is less than this. So that is going to do the division. Then the other one is just going to be up here, you see. Then we multiply it by this quantity over here. That is what we mean. So times 6. All right. I'm taking that again. This method is very, very simple if you do understand it. Hence, I'm taking it again. So we are saying that 3 pence cost 6, right? Now, how much would 5 pence cost? It is definitely going to cost more, right? So the principle says if more, less divide. If more, less divide. So we are comparing this number here and then this number here. Which one is less? Which one is the smallest? This is going to be the smallest. Hence, it will do the division, and then the other number becomes our numerator. Then all we do is we multiply by what we had over here. So we multiply by our 6. Then we do our evaluation. And if you have to evaluate 5 over 3 times your 6, if you cancel out, 3 divides 6 twice. So 5 times 2 gives you what? 10. You see? So it simply means that what the cost of 5 pence is what? Your 10 cedis. Very, very simple and indirect. Unlike the one we did previously. You see? But it is important you understand both methods. You see? The reason being that some questions would directly ask you what the constant of proportionality is. You see, looking at the question, if all we wanted was the, what do you call it? The constant of proportionality, then this formula here is fine. You see, so if all we wanted was the cost of the pen, then this second method as well is very, very simple and it's fine. You see, so you are to understand and know when to use what formula, right? Or which method, depending on the question and then what suits you, and then the time factor as well. So let's solve one last question, and then I will give some exercises for you to try. This here is our second question. It says a car travels 120 kilometers in 2 hours, right? Now, how far will it travel in 5 hours? Our solution. I would first of all use the second method. You see, now patiently do what we need to do if we're asked for the constant of proportionality. So looking at our parameters here, we have what? The length that has been traveled, or the distance, and then hours. You see, okay, and you realize that for every 2 hours, he's traveling at 120 kilometers, right? So the ratio is what? Hours to what? Distance. Now we want 5 hours. So we ask ourselves, if you are traveling 120 in just 2 hours, then in about 5 hours, would you have traveled more or less in the same speed, right? Using the same speed, would you have traveled more or less? You would definitely have traveled more. You see, so we say if more, less divide. You see, if more, less divide. The inverse says if less, more divide. But then this time we want more. So if more, less divide. So we compare 5 and then 2. Then ask ourselves, which one is less? You see, as you can see, this here is less. So that is what is going to do the division. Then the bigger one becomes our numerator times 120, right? And this is just a matter of fraction. So 5 over 2 times 122 divides itself once into 120, 60, right? Then we have 5 times 6 giving us what? 300. See? So we can conclude and say that therefore it will travel what? 300 kilometers in 5 hours, right? 300 kilometers in 5 hours. With that done, let's look at how we would have solved it if we were to use the previous method. So we know we have what? Once again, the distance to time, right? So the relationship between distance and then time. Or let me say, yes. So the relation between distance and time, it is a direct proportionality. You see, direct proportionality. So the distance is directly proportional to what? The time taken. And we now want to change it. So we have what? Distance is equal to kt. Now use your first set of values, that is 120 and then 2 hours to get your k, right? So 120 is equal to our k, which we don't know, times t, which was 2. And making our k the subject, we are just going to divide both sides by 2. So we divide here by 2, and this cancels this. And we can say 120 divided by 2 gives us a 60. So our k is equal to 60. This simply means that this relationship here, or this equation, would now become d is equal to k, which is 60t, right? So our constant of proportionality, k, is equal to 60. That is if the question asked you to look for the constant of proportionality. Now that we have our d to be what? 60t, or 60 times t, it says how far will it travel in 5 hours? So we come and do our substitution. D is equal to 60 times the time that was taken was what? 5 hours. So times 5. And then our D is equal to what? 300 kilometers. So therefore it will travel what? 300 kilometers in 5 hours, just as we did at this left hand side here. So both formulas complement each other. And if you understand them both, it would be of great help to you. I do hope that this lesson was understandable. If there's any issue of concern, you can let me know at the comment section and I'll address that to you. So here you have some exercises you can try on your own. So here are the questions. They are just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I would like you to use both methods. Right. So the first one, you can use the very short one and then get down your answer. Then the second one, use the method illustrated here. You show me the proportionality, be able to identify or change the proportionality into an equality, right? Using the equal to sign. You solve for your value of k, then you get your answer. And in all, make sure you get the same answer, right? Okay. So see you in our next video where we look at inverse proportionality. Stay safe.